Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope you had a wonderful week. And so today we're going to start from where we left last week. Now, from our last video, we learned a couple of things. One, we learned that traditional African religion are a set of very highly diverse beliefs. We also learned that traditional African religions are oral rather than scriptural. The other distinction from the traditional African religions and the very many religions in the continent today is that the traditional African religion is directly linked with the traditional African medicine. So the belief in the spirits, ancestors, and the supernatural power is a very important element in the traditional African religion. Now, before the African medicine man or medicine woman administered their treatment or medication, depending on what part of the continent you are in, and I say depending on what part of the continent you are in because there are some parts of the continent today that some of those practices that were very common then are not very commonly administered today. Now, let us go back to traditional African medicine. So before medication or treatment is administered, the healer will consult the spirits and the ancestors. And this was because the healer understood or understands that there is a higher power that will do the healing. So they will call the spirits and the ancestors to guide them to the practice of ministering the medication. Now, that shows us that there was no disconnect between the traditional African religion and traditional African medicine. And this practice was almost universal across the continent of Africa. Although there are several arguments and disputes that there is no single body or religion or religious beliefs and practices that can be identified as the African religion, which makes sense or which is true because most native Africans practiced in different ways. They worshipped differently. They administered or they treated, they used treatments or medicine differently. But the contrary is, there are similarities in worldviews and ritual practices across geographical and ethnical boundaries. The traditional African religions all hold the view that there is a supernatural power and creator of a dynamic universe, God. So regardless of how they worshipped, regardless of how they administered their treatment, they all understood one thing. There is this supernatural power, the creator of a dynamic universe. Now, so to speak, there is that understanding. There's been an understanding across the entire continent, and that there is God. So the indigenous Africans were not so surprised at the introduction of these other religions, such as Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, and many others. Now, for example, let's take Christians. When Christianity was introduced to the continent of Africa, the introducers came with the Bible, teaching Jesus Christ. Ultimately, Jesus Christ was to lead his followers to God. Now, Islam, they came with the Quran, a teaching about Muhammad. Now, the followers of Muhammad were to be led to God, Allah. So, you see, all the religions, Christians were teaching Christ, but you end up to God. Muslims who are teaching Muhammad, you end up to Allah, who is God. The indigenous of the native Africa also, through their spirits and ancestors, pointed to one supernatural power, God. Now, let us take an example, the region where I come from. It's hills and slopes, and it rains a lot. And during that time of rains, or during that time of raining, there are thundering and lightning. Now, before the introduction of Christianity, which is predominant around the area that I come from, the natives of that region already knew and believed that there was God. And many still hold to their original belief in God. And the God they believed in was called Ngoro. Now, Ngoro, the supreme creator and the force behind those lightning and the thundering, could only be spoken to through the spirits and ancestors. And the reason was this Ngoro was very powerful. They always looked at the sun and they believed that this Ngoro, God, he lived behind the sun. And when it was thundering and lightning, they believed that it was that superpower or that supreme creator who was behind. It was the force behind those powerful lightning and powerful thundering. Now, we'll look into details about this powerful supreme creator who lived behind the sun and behind the powerful thundering and lightning, and why. But I want to thank you for joining me on this video, and I look forward to the next video with you. Thank you very much.